Okay, so I've just woken up. um, and apparently, I felt the surge of energy to speak about something, to record something. And this seems, again, for me, it seems like a deep subject that it might go through multiple layers, multiple recountings. And I don't know if it has a final point to it. I think this recording is just laying out some of the experiences, understandings, and insights I had over and over recurrently these last 5 to 7 years. And what I am going to speak about right now, I feel to say since the start that are just whatever I'm going to depict, whatever things that are going to be depicted right now, are just my personal experiences and observations that I've personally came to a solid view on after seeing the same thing through self-observation, through, let's say, direct experience over and over. So it would be the same information in a way coming over and over. And how it would happen is that at first, at the beginning, for example, an information would come in the form of a seed. It would be just like the first hint, the first glimpse, just the first. It's like seeing an image that is blurred, and then over the years, the same image would become clearer, more clear, and more clear. And how I know this might have a validity to it, because I also encounter this thing like, how do I know if these things are true? Like, okay, I see them, I understand them, I have these insights, I can access them, but how do I know if they are true? Like, how do I know they're not an imagination, How do I know it's not a fabulation in this mind? Because I had for sure to ask this, because, like, I didn't know if these are true. And I couldn't just say things that I don't know if they're true or not. So this is why there is always the level of doubt. There's always the level of not being able, honestly, if I would be completely honest, to even say, even if these informations, I've studied them and I've observed them through years and years, I feel to always leave a level of openness to them, because things could always be a bit different, because I haven't remembered myself fully. So I'm not in full remembrance of myself. So I cannot affirm that a certain information that I'm seeing is complete. But what I can affirm, and I've become more and more sure of, is that even if a certain information is not complete, I feel more and more confident to say that it has a level of validity to it. Even if it's not complete, even if it's just a piece of the puzzle, I've looked at it in so much time with the most like um, like a surgeon type of honesty, because I only wanted the truth my entire life since I know myself, since I was a child. I only wanted the truth. Uh, so I've tried to, even when I would look within myself, to be as cutting as possible, like to be as precise as possible, to leave no level of doubt that what I'm seeing is actually what I'm seeing and not what I want to see or what I imagine. Okay, so these things that I'm sharing usually are just bits and pieces of information that I've come to see recurrently over these years through self-observation. And even though they might not be completed, and I don't think they are, I think they have a level of validity to them, and that's it. I think they might have a level of validity to them. I mean, now before diving into the subject of what I felt to share and record with this recording, I need to say before starting anything, I've realized that I need to speak more about the tool with which this information can be available for everybody. Like, this information can be accessed by anyone. Like, anyone can access true information from within itself. Like, there is zero need of teachers. There is zero need of external books. There is zero need of external knowledge, because all the knowledge exists already. We don't invent anything. We merely tap into the knowledge that already exists. And different people tap into the same knowledge, and they are able to translate that knowledge in different ways through their body, mind, soul system. So through different individual human consciousnesses, which I refer to the human consciousness as the body, mind, soul system, the triune system, the human consciousness, different human consciousnesses are translating the same knowledge through different systems. So it would come with the same knowledge, the same idea, the same truth. It's coming over and over, but in different languages, flavored in a certain way through a certain person, and flavored through a different way through a different person. But essentially, what I'm seeing is that it's one single truth, one single reality, one single knowledge, true knowledge, I mean now, living knowledge, pure knowledge, which this recording might take us to even that subject. By the way, I have no idea. I've made a short list here this time, the first time that I made a list with subject, because usually my mind tends to be all over the place, because I feel like I'm seeing so much, like the entire puzzle. It's like so many pieces are in front of my face, and my mind just, it's like a child that gets enthusiastic and gets to a piece. And then there's that one and just jumps around. And in order to have a structure, I don't know if even that's possible with this mind, but in order to have an attempt at structure, here it is. I've made a list. So the idea is that before starting to go into the subjects on this list, I need to speak first about the tool with which any human consciousness can access this knowledge, because this is first of all, this is something, this knowledge, having access to it, is something extreme. I personally feel to be extremely natural. This is like our birthright. To be able to know is essential to be able to be a true human being. Like, I can't really, like, my system, my human consciousness, my body, mind, soul system is designed in such a way in which And I think it comes even higher, from a level higher than the human consciousness. This trait that I find within this particular system here is that I can't understand how anybody would consider that life could be truly experienced and lived when a person doesn't even know the minimum of what one is. Like, how could we go through life like blind persons in a dark and trying and thinking that that is life, not knowing anything, not knowing how our bodies work, not knowing how the entire environment, what the heck is this? Like, how could you go through life like that and think that that is life? Like, I don't know, something within this system here considers that the first main step in having any chance at a sanity in this world would be to acquire true knowledge. Like, how could one think that you can just go on like that, amnesiac, like drooling from your, like saliva drooling from your mouth, like that through life? Like, how could one think that we could just go like that through life with no true knowledge, not knowing what this thing is? This mind and this soul and this human consciousness here cannot comprehend that. So, there is a tool that, through this life experience here, I have understood it, through which anybody, if it's what somebody truly feels and wants, can acquire and access this living knowledge that is present and available at all times for anybody. And this tool is the most simple tool imaginable. And I will first name it in the way I received it, like in the way it has been given and portrayed and described to me. So the way I received it was like this. The tool was staying in the present moment. What does that mean? It means that as a being on earth, as this human consciousness, we free our minds, we free even our souls we free our minds from any idea, any belief, any thought, any desire, anything. We just free our mind as much as we can, of course, and we free even our souls, because the soul also needs to be at peace. The soul is the one that has feelings and emotions and desires and burning intent and all sorts of things like this. So as much as we can, we need to free our soul as well, and we just stay completely open to what is right now in front of us, just like it is. Staying in the present moment, it means just being like this. And once this a human consciousness accesses this tool, accesses this inner beingness, then true knowledge starts to be revealed by itself. It's nothing one needs to know prior to this. It's nothing special that one needs to do prior to this. You can forget all the books that you have ever read. You can forget anything that you ever heard, and I actually would recommend it. That you trust yourself, you learn to trust yourself that much, that you can stay in that presence, that you can stay in that emptiness as naked as possible, naked of any information that you have ever encountered, naked of any knowledge, any books, anything that your body, mind, soul has accumulated in this life through external means. So you just go there in your holy place within, because it's the holy ground. And you go there as naked as possible. You go there with only with your being. It's like stepping into a church. You leave your shoes at the door. You leave your knowledge. You leave your human existence there at the door of your being, and you enter within your being completely naked. And if you're there completely naked and you just stay with yourself, stay with your own beingness, true knowledge, which is different than intellectual knowledge, which is different than mental knowledge, and hence it is true knowledge is different than what your mind might think it is. True knowledge can start to infuse your being. So true knowledge comes to you. You can't seek true knowledge. You can't do anything to obtain it. You can only sit within your very being in complete silence and stillness. And by being there in that inner temple, in that pure openness, pure receptivity, listening, listening, and stopping any thoughts, stopping any emoting, stopping any desire, just listening, just being. When you stay like that, when you are like that, that's the ground zero of existence. That's the ground zero of life itself. It opens all the doors through all the levels of your being. And then you will start to know. Now, how you will start to know? There are many ways in which this knowledge can happen to you. One, at first, when for example, you're not acquainted to this process and you're just starting, you will be there and you'll be in silence and you'll be in nothingness, and it will be just that. It will be just nothingness for a long period of time. It might be long, I'm not sure how this can unfold for different individuals, but it might take long for some individuals, right? So in some cases, you'll just stay there in nothingness, and that it will be all for some time. It will be just nothing, but it will be peace, but it will be rejuvenation, but you will feel more and more alive. You will come to feel like when you were a child, when you were 3 years old, that purity, that innocence, that trueness of being. You will feel it once again, and it will rejuvenate your being. You will not even need knowledge at that moment, because you'll have everything. You'll feel like you've touched again the sense of true life that you knew as a child. So once, like at first, you will not even need anything extra. You will not need to even know anything, because it will be enough. Finally, it will be enough. So at the first level, you can just stay there, stay in that presence, stay in that. It's like like that's holy. That's something that everybody needs to tap and touch and feel and experience for itself without words that could enter into your mind, and then your mind would ask, "Oh, am I feeling the purity? Am I feeling the innocence? Oh, why am I not feeling it?" So, yeah. So as little words as possible we can say about this. I think it's even better, because our minds are still distorted, but it's okay. The mind is coming back. The mind is getting healthier by doing this process. Everything in the human consciousness, by doing this process, rejuvenates. It's like the human consciousness, this triune system, right? You have body, you have mind, and you have soul. What happened with this human consciousness? I'm just feeling to go briefly into this. Is that something at some point you have this brilliant technology, this brilliant human consciousness, this threefold human consciousness, right? It's brilliant at first. It's a brilliant foolproof technology, a brilliant, let's say, cosmic technology. It's something beyond what our notions of technology is. But you have it and it works perfectly. It's like the atom, it spins and it's aligned. The body, mind, and soul, they're so perfectly aligned that they become the atom of life. It's like the power this human consciousness has is unimaginable, unimaginable when it is aligned, when the atom, it's like those three things of the atom, you know, the neutron, the proton, and the electron, right? Well, you have these three things, you have them spinning, right? And you have this nucleus of the atom itself. When the human consciousness is aligned, it's like the atom that is perfectly aligned, and all those three exterior circles are moving, revolving with such a precision, with a perfect designed precision, that because they are moving in their core, this unimaginable substance is produced. It's unimaginable, unspeakable what it is produced when this human consciousness is aligned. But at some point, the atom of life, this human consciousness, was misaligned. Something happened, and there was a disconnection in this human consciousness. It was like, and the body disconnected from the soul, and the soul disconnected from the mind. And now everybody's like, you take that atom, and it's going like that. The circles are, one is moving in that direction, one is doing like this, one is, it's not is, there is no synchronization anymore. And because there is no synchronization, that nucleus that it would have arisen in the middle of the atom, it dies, like it shuts off. That light within, that power within, shuts off when the body mind soul system is misaligned. And currently, in this experience that we find ourselves right now, the atom of life, the human consciousness, seems misaligned for sure. We don't have that inner power, we don't see it. It's not there, apparently. So, to get back to that power, there is this process, staying in the present moment, just being. It's synonymous with just being, completely empty minded, empty hearted, empty, just staying there within your very beingness. What that does is that it automatically aligns the body mind soul system. It automatically aligns it. Without doing anything consciously, just staying within your being is like staying in that nucleus. You become the nucleus when you do that. You stop being a soul, you stop being a mind, you stop being a body, you become the nucleus, that power that initially, when the body, mind, soul was aligned and moving in synchronicity with one another, that nucleus would have been enlightened, ignited, and it would be like this powerful, powerful condensed light that it would ignite in the middle of that atom, and that would be the full atom of life. It would be body, mind, soul, and spirit in the middle, which would be the nucleus. So, once you go into that nucleus, you can go by yourself. Your body might be broken. Your mind might be completely distorted, lost in imaginary parallel worlds, artificially constructed, simulated realities. Your mind might be completely off the charts. Your soul might feel lost, damaged, traumatized. So all these three entities might be broken. It's like splints of the atom, like going in their own way, completely mad. But the only thing that is still intact, and it will always be, it's the nucleus, it's the spirit, which is always there, which is always available, which is always the same, which is unmoved, unchanged, forever, eternally. Spirit. And you go into your spirit, you access your spirit by staying in the present moment. By staying in that present moment, it's like staying within your own spirit, within your own being. You unite again with your own being, the heart of hearts. That's the heart. Spirit is the heart. So once you go there in that nucleus, what happens is that by the presence that you can bring to that beingness that you are, is that beingness, you bring now the light that lights the atom. And by lighting out, lights the atom, lights the nucleus, you become the light that lights your own being now. It's in your hands right now. Because in the past, the atom would work by itself. These three entities would spin in the correct way. The body, mind, soul would be like the spinning. They would spin synchronously. Synchronously? I don't know if it's a word. But they would spin in an aligned and synchronous way, one with another one. And because they would spin in this way, the nucleus would be enlightened, ignited within, and it would have this powerful light at the middle of, in the center of these spinning circles. Now, these circles are like a ship that has been wrecked. Okay, every one of these entities, it's separated from one another. They can't communicate with one another. The body doesn't see the soul. The body has war with the mind, and the mind with the soul, and they are like freaking wrecked. The only thing that can now bring them together is you becoming the nucleus on your own, through your own power, through your own will. You becoming the nucleus. And it's the reverse. You become the nucleus, you light yourself up, and then these three entities remember. They start remembering. Oh, wow! Because now they have light, and they are like, oh my god! Mind is you, I know you. Like body talking to the mind. It's like, oh yeah, I know you, body. Oh, I know you, soul. Oh, hey, weren't we together doing this together at first? Hey, I remember. Like we were like that, and the mind remembers and comes here again in the center of the being, instead of being in these illusory, artificially constructed worlds. The soul also remembers, oh, okay, I don't need to feel traumatized anymore because I have my mind here with me and my body here with me, and we are together again. So these three entities, they need to be together. The body, mind, soul, they need to come again together, recognize each other, because right now they are not recognizing each other. There's like three softwares that something happened in the hardware that they don't recognize the signals anymore that it coming from one another. So the mind does not recognize the language of the soul anymore. The soul does not, maybe even refuses the language of the mind. The body is like this thing that it would have had to have a functional body, soul and mind working together to have a functional and healthy human body, which was eternal when the mind and the soul would be perfectly aligned with one another. We would have this eternal, perfect human body, which without zero decay, zero death, and so on. That's more to that. Okay. So yeah, so these three entities stopped communicating with one another. The body, mind, soul stopped communicating, and because they stopped communicating, of course, it's like a team that cannot work, like cannot produce the thing together anymore, since they don't see or understand each other anymore. Okay, so now if you find yourself in this wrecked ship, you find yourself in this human consciousness that is apparently broken, right? And you're the technician, you want to be the technician, you want to repair it, yeah, right? So let's say you find this thing within you, because again, you can't invent this wheel. Either it is or it isn't like that. Either you deeply feel, okay, I need to do something, there is a different way in which life needs to be, but there has to be a burning instinct within, and only that burning instinct will give you the power enough to be able to withhold this process. So if you find that instinct within, even to the smallest whisper, right? If you find something within that you feel that life, your life, has to be, and you know it to be different, you know that there is something different that feels more natural and more normal to you, and you feel this instinct, this unerring instinct within to work, do something, to perhaps get to that natural instance that you know of yourself. So if you feel that, then you have the means. The good news is that if you are determined and if you really feel this instinct within you, you have all the tools, and it's much more simple than you have. It's like the most simple thing. Once you have the will enough to do it, it becomes the most simple thing to do it. And it's like this. You just go within your being and you just stay there. Stay as your being. And stay as your beingness, I mean. And once you stay there, once you unite with your spirit, with your heart, and you'll do this without thinking, because just by being, you will become your heart. That's the heart. Beingness, this moment, is the timeless heart. This is it. So the heart is not what the mind has projected and fabulated itself to be. It's not like puffy love and rainbows and butterflies and stuff like this. It's just this beingness, this purity, this innocence, this thing that happens right here, right now, when there is zero mind, zero soul, zero feeling, zero emotion, zero thoughts, zero ideas, just this acceptance, this nothingness, this purity at first, right? So you just go there within your being and you just stay within this purity, and that's enough for your entire body, mind, soul system to be revitalized, rejuvenated, to be rejuvenated, okay? So why? Because when you go into your beingness, that inner nucleus, that inner light starts to shine once again. It's like a room in which you turn on the light. And what is like, once you turn on the light in the room, that nucleus that lights up, these three entities that were going berserk because they were in darkness and they were disconnected from one another, this body, mind, and soul, these three entities, now it's like turning on the light and they are, oh, you're here, I can see you, mind. Oh, you're here, I can see you, body. Oh, let's unite together. And they just know, and they just align themselves by themselves. And then by just sitting in your core, in that middle point, in that nucleus, in that heart, because you have core in French, heart. When you sit in that core, in your heart, these three entities, the body, mind, and soul, realign themselves by themselves. They start remembering what to do. The entire human consciousness gets energized, gets rejuvenated, aligned, and extremely much more than this. But that's the process and the discovery, individual discovery that one needs to attain by itself. So these are just the first guidelines. And then the rest of the process needs to be done and entertained and attained and experienced individually. Okay, so that concludes this small detour of what happens with the body, mind, soul consciousness when we stay in our core, in our hearts, in our presence, in our beingness, right? Okay, so now I said that at first, when one is doing this process and approaching this process for the first time, there might seem a lot of staying in the nothingness. There might seem a lot of nothingness. It might seem like nothing happens. Well, I'm just staying there. It's nothing. Well, it's not nothing. It's not nothing. Your mind just needs time to slowly relearn and unlearn many beliefs, many ideas, many visions, many thoughts, especially beliefs, that it clutters the mind's true vision over what is happening within your life. Because by sitting in that nothingness, your mind starts to clarify itself by itself. You don't need to do anything, no exercises to clarify your mind, no things to purify your soul or anything. You just stay in that nucleus, in that presence, in that core. And it is done by itself. You just need to hold the present. You just need to hold your own beingness, if that makes sense. Just that. Just stay there in that presence, and it's enough to hold that nothingness within. Stay in that apparent nothing. Stay in that silence, in that apparent emptiness. Just embracing it with your entire awareness, your entire presence. Just be there. So when you stay like that, your body starts to calibrate again with your soul, and your soul with your mind, and your mind with your soul especially. They start to calibrate. They start to become one. But that's another thing. Your mind with your soul starts to calibrate in such a way that they will project together a physical body that seems more and more in tune with everything around and life itself and your being. And your body, ultimately, when this process is fully achieved, your body becomes the direct emanation of your being. It becomes your being. There is no distinction between your body and your being at last. When this process is, let's say, fully finalized or completed or in tuned. It's not finalized because it's nothing final, but it's in tune again. The body becomes one with the heart. The core and the body, they become one. Spirit and matter become one. But that's another thing. So, at the first levels, it might seem that well, I'm just staying there. It's nothing. It's cruel. It's unbearable because your mind will still feel accustomed to constant thinking, to constant emoting. It's actually the addiction comes from the soul, not exactly from the mind. But that's another topic. Everybody says like you're addicted to thoughts, and it's deeper than that. You're addicted to feeling weak. You're addicted to suffering. It's the addiction to pain that creates thoughts. It's addiction to being wrecked, to being a mess, to suffer. It's an addiction. Suffering and pain is an addiction at some level. And it creates a wish to suffer. It's a wish. It's an unconscious, very, very deep-rooted wish to suffer. It's a very deep-rooted wish to experience ourselves ignorant, little, weak, unknowing. It's a wish. It's a powerful wish within the soul. The soul is the one, the main one, that holds this powerful energy of wanting to suffer. And because the soul has this wish, the soul influences the mind because the soul is the holder of energy and is the one that gives the mind the energy for the mind to project all these realities. And if the soul gives the mind the energy of suffering, then the mind will project all these worlds of suffering. So the mind will invent thoughts and beliefs, and it will be extremely good at this, to invent thoughts and beliefs that will solidify that suffering into physical realities. So, yeah, the suffering comes from the soul. The soul wants to suffer. It wants the pain. It wants to feel the pain. Not necessarily the pain, but the suffering of the pain. It's more. Suffering is more than pain. Pain is pure. Pain is just truth. Something lets you know that something is not right, right? That's pain. Suffering is the desire to to be separated, to not want to unite with what's right, to stay away from what's right, and to just indulge in that apparent freedom of just being in pain. If that makes sense. Yeah. So once you stay there in your core, the pain of the soul, the desire for separation that the soul holds within itself, will start to vanish more and more, because the soul will feel the light of the core again, and it will feel like, oh my god, that's home. Like, okay, I don't want to go off wandering separated from you, because now I see you. You're there. You're my light. It's like you're my core. The soul, of course, feels enamored with the core. It feels enamored with that light, but it needs the light, because when that light of the being, or of the core, is not present, the soul goes off in darkness and becomes this monster of pain and suffering, because it feels in darkness and it feels all alone and it feels completely abandoned. And it then goes on and gives the energy of suffering to the mind, and the mind creates all these universes of suffering. So the soul is the main entity that has produced these entire universes of suffering, because it felt disconnected from the core, from the being, from the spirit, from the heart. When the light of the spirit and the light of the core is not present, the soul becomes this monster that feels abandoned, feels alone, because it feels like this child that is left in darkness, because the soul is the child of the spirit. That's the essence of it. The soul is the child of the spirit, and if the spirit is not there, it's like a parent that is missing, it's like a light that is not lighted in a room. The soul feels in darkness, left alone, on its own, has to handle itself on its own. It feels abandoned, it feels this deep missing, this deep rooted pain that it doesn't know how to understand or what to do with it. So it starts using its mind to construct realities to play in, but all those realities are constructed from that pain, and it will eventually cause more pain to the soul, and so on, so on. And that would always keep the body freezed and wrecked and unable to really be what the body truly is. And yeah, so okay, getting back to the core. So when one stays in the core of its being, in that presence, in that emptiness, in that nothingness, what happens is that a calibration happens automatically of the mind, of the body, and of the soul. The soul starts to feel the light of the core, the light of spirit, the light of being, the light of the heart. And by that light, it feels warmed, it feels guided, it feels cared for, it feels seen, it feels loved. The soul starts feeling true love, pure love, washing over it, embracing it inside out, penetrating it. It feels home, it feels natural. When the soul starts to feel like that, it stops any trace of pleasure to suffer, of wanting to suffer, of desiring to suffer, of enjoying to suffer, starts to wash away. It's like something that washes away from the soul. It doesn't need suffering anymore, doesn't need to feel alone anymore. So now the soul brings a different type of energy to the mind. It's an energy of integration, it's an energy of home, it's an energy of feeling cared for, feeling powerful, feeling understood, feeling loved. And when the soul brings that energy to the mind now takes that energy and creates realities with it, physical realities, in which one feels more and more integrated. Their environment responds differently, uh, feeling more cared for, more understood, more loved. So, this is how the soul and the mind work together to create physical realities. And then the product of this new, more calibrated soul and mind team creates a physical body that feels more in tune, more healthy, more vital, more and more in tune with all other things around, and it just becomes again this initial atom that spins perfectly around the center, around the nucleus. So, at the first beginning stages, when one starts to abide, let's say, in this state of beingness, it might seem that at the first stages, it might seem like, well, it's nothing here. It's just emptiness. It's just nothing that I know of, nothing that my mind knows of. And one needs to continue staying there. Because even if it seems like nothing, in reality, there is a lot happening. There is a calibration that is happening between the mind, body, and soul that is invisible. And the mind, you will not be able to notice it, maybe, from the first times when you do this. But soon, if you start to pay attention to your life, you will start to see that things are changing. And this is what I wanted to portray, is that maybe at first, when you go within your being and you just stay within your being, it would seem like nothing. And that's actually how it is. Much time it can seem like nothing at all. Nothing is happening. You don't know anything new. You're just the way you are. And it can feel unbearable because there is no guidance. Okay, I'm just sitting there, just doing nothing. What's the point? The mind asks. What's the point of just sitting like that? Like a fool. These words here are emitted for your mind to assure your mind and to make the mind remember this process that is happening. Because what I feel is lacking in many spiritual areas is that many people, especially from the Eastern traditions, are coming from this light version of ourselves. So the Eastern traditions are coming from a perspective where they are just going to the end of it. They are just skipping to the end, and they just give you the tool. Oh, just stay in the present moment, just meditate, just be. But if they just take you to the end and they just leave you there with no guidelines, just be there. But what I personally feel now through experience is that if you give is like giving this is it's precious. It's giving the end is like the Eastern traditions are giving the best tool possible. It's like staying in the present moment, rest as awareness, be, just sit, just be. It's precious. It's the truth. It's the ultimate tool. It's indeed the truth. But it's like giving a child a knife or something, a tool that is so powerful, and you actually say how to. You actually teach the child how to use that tool. But you see, the child is more than a body. Is more than this robot that you just teach it to do something and it will do it and it will achieve it. That might happen as well. If that child, if that being is this type of being that is can take a instruction and just do it. But some beings are, let's say, much more not, but they have a mind. They want to understand what's happening. They want all the entirety of their being to be on the same page, not only like, okay, I'm just following instructions and I'm waiting for this miracle to happen to me, it's like still you need a mind to understand what's happening. You need a mind to understand the process. You need a soul to be able to be in tune with the process, and you need your body to do it. You need your presence, your awareness to do it, right? So you need all these three entities to be brought on the same page. You can't only like you can't speak only to the soul and you say to the soul, okay, you bring your awareness back to your being. But if your soul and your mind does not understand what that means, what will happen if I do that? Like the mind also needs to be brought on the same page with the soul and the body, and together as a team, they need to do this process together. Because if, from my experience, if all these three entities are brought on the same page, this process can unfold much more quickly, much more easy, much more painless. Because imagine you're going within your being and you stay there, right? You stay within your being, and the instructions that you have received only go so far, right? You stay within your being, and that's the end. No one tells you anything extra, right? So what would I be able to expect there? Like, what would happen? And I agree that from some point on, there is no need to talk about what will happen because it's an inner discovery, it's an inner process that needs to occur. But I also feel that some things need to be given to the mind so the mind also can understand a bit of the process. So it can tune itself with the rest of the process instead of just going there, the mind, oh, you're just this crappy entity, like I don't need you, and I will just ignore you, and I will just. No, the mind needs to be brought here, and the mind is not stupid. The mind is the most intelligent creature that we have here in this system, and once it is explained, hey, here, mind, this is how it will benefit us to come together to the core, and this is what's happening, and you might not know for some time what's happening, but rest assured that this is the process, this is what we have decided to embark on. So here it is. This is what it will happen. You might not know for some time, but then this and this and this. So the mind, oh, okay. So I might not know, and I might feel a bit uncomfortable. So, but you spoke to the mind. You brought it on the same page. You explained to the mind what will happen. You explained to the mind that for some time you might not need mental activity, but you still bring it with you. You still use it. You still it's like like a brother or sister, something that you keep it with you in your team, even though it might need to act differently now a bit. And that's different when you approach yourself like that. Instead of just saying, "Oh, the mind is a monster, the mind is a demon. I need to demonize it." Of course, the mind is like it's like a child left like, "Oh well, what I do now." But yeah, so the idea is that I feel that these Eastern traditions are the most accurate you can find, in a way, for bringing a being to the end and giving the process just as is, the most effective one, and that's it. Here it is, the process, the end of it. You don't need anything extra. This is the end tool. Stay within your being, and everything else you will understand it by yourself. And I feel this is true. But to make this process a bit easier, because a lot of beings seem to have a hard time with this process, just after a lifetime of just frenetically mentally chatting and soulfully emitting these energies of suffering, and after all this lifetime just quieting everything down, it can feel unbearable for the mind because the mind does not know what will happen. What's this. So if we give some guidelines, some things for the mind to also perhaps have a bit of grasp of the process, then the mind can also join the process. Now, to make a comparison, I feel that the Western traditions, like I found it, for example, like Christian Hermeticism or alchemy or these Western traditions, what I like in them is that they go so much into giving instructions to each step of the process, man. It's like they have been the chemical path, for example, they have been charting precisely like a surgeon the path to the self. It's even like too much instructions, it's like such a rigid system in a way. Um, you know, like a path that is so well charted. No, you need to do this, and then you need to do this, and then this, and then this. And it's a path, it's a chart, it's so well mapped and laid out in a way. And it's on the opposite side. So the Western traditions, some of them, they are so mental, so they are involving the mind, but even sometimes to an exacerbated, I don't know if this is a word, but to like a heightened up degree. They involve the mind for sure. For sure, like I personally see the Western traditions involving the mind for sure. They bring it on, but sometimes it can feel a bit too much. Like they involve too much mind in the process of coming to the self. So between the light, the light. So I personally see that the Eastern traditions are working with the light self. The light self is the one who knows, the one who kept the memory of who we and what we are. And the dark self is the one who doesn't know what we are. It's the mental self, the dark self, and the light self is just the heart, the being, the soul, let's say. Uh, or no, the heart. So you have the light self, many Eastern traditions working with the light self, and many Western traditions working with the dark self. And between these two opposites, there has to be this middle ground where you need to speak about pure being. You need to speak about just being, just resting with not so much tools as the the Western traditions are bringing. Just you need to have that simple tool of just being, but you also need to have the intermediary layout at least to some extent to give to the mind, so the mind can be on the same page with the rest of the system. Because I personally feel that we are here to integrate the whole of our being into one. It's not only like this is how it feels intuitively, common sense, right? Like if we have a mind and we have a soul and we have a body and we have a heart and a spirit, then don't they like just need to exist together because they already exist? Like I already have a mind and I already have a soul and I already have a body and I already have a spirit. Like don't somehow these things they just need to work together properly instead of just demonizing the body or the mind or the soul or it isn't just common sense, it isn't just intuitively natural that there has to be a way, a formula in which these all these things need to fuse together. Anyway, but the fusing together, from my experience, happens through this just being, just this tool of just staying there in the core, in this beingness. Nothing else needs to happen because this beingness, just sitting here in this core, aligns the body mind soul system like circles circling around this core, like planets around the sun. It's just calibrating everything, but just being here. But to make this process of just being much more comprehensible for the mind, so the mind doesn't need to fight so much with it, we can explain to the mind that exactly this, that this process is here to calibrate our entire being, including the mind, with the body and with the soul, calibrating everything around the core, which is the heart, which is the spirit, in order for us to attain our integral, unified being. This is the knowledge that needs to be given to the mind. So the mind understands, oh, okay, so I'm here to upgrade myself. I'm here to finally unite myself with the entirety of myself. I'm here. This entire life on earth has been like a launch pad for my true being to launch itself into existence. So once the mind understands what's the real purpose of this thing, then the mind can naturally come on board with this process. But if we just say to the mind that, oh yeah, you're just rubbish, you're just this demon that keeps me from being like feeling happy within my being, feeling whole within myself, because you're taking me away from myself, which is true. But this only happens because the mind, as I said, the mind, the soul, and the body, currently, all three of them are disconnected from the core. So the soul takes us away from our core right now. The mind takes us away from our core right now. And the body, this projected physical body, takes us away from our core. But this is just because they are disconnected. It's not like they are demons that want to harm us. No, it's because the light of our core is not lighted up enough to be light in the room, to have that nucleus lighted up, and to that nucleus, once it's lighted up, acting like this powerful magnetic force, calibrating all these three other entities around it. So it's not the mind that takes us away from our being, it's the light that is missing from within us that makes the mind go off like that. It's us not being the light that we are, not holding up that inner presence, that inner light, active, on. So, yeah, at first, when one does this, when one takes up this process of just being, um, one can find itself in this, for some time, in this nothingness with nothing else, no knowledge, nothing else happening, apparently. But if one starts to observe its exterior life, after it does this process, it can start to observe differences. It can start to observe things changing. And if one starts to truly take on with devotion and seriousness this process, it will be able to pay attention to the changes, and it will be able to intuitively understand that these changes occur when I do this process of just being. So at first, we will only know that something is happening when, if we will look at our external situations. So once we stay there in that beingness, it would appear like nothing is happening. But as much as we hold that nothing, that being, that void, that emptiness, that silence, as much as we hold it and we just rest in it, we just hold it, as much as we hold it, when we come out of that, we can see, if we pay attention, that things are changing in the reality around. And that's the feedback. That's the validation that our mind, our body, and our soul needs to know that truly something is happening. And this is how, once it sees and gets some validation, it can go with much more power, much more force, much more, oh yeah, I want to go in my core every day. I want to stay there in my presence. I want to, because the mind feels much more clarified, the soul feels much more trauma free and pain free. The body starts to feel more and more energized and creative. So, of course, seeing these effects, one would naturally feel to that nothing would not start to feel annoying anymore, or boring, or fearful, or it would just seem like, oh wow, what is that? Like, curiosity would start to arise, like awe would start to arise, love, pure love can start to arise for it, as it. So, with time, this is the first stage. The first stage is when you just stay in the nothing and you trust it. And you learn to work with it by observing how your body, mind, and soul changes. And by the body, mind, soul changing, you will observe in the physical reality changes, because your mind projects the physical reality, your body interacts with the physical reality. If these entities are changed, then the corresponding physicality is changed as well. So, at first it will be this stage, and it can take years, or depending on the inner will of somebody and the inner speed somebody's have, where speed only equates honesty and true love for truth. This is the only speed. Speed is not mentally wanting something, it's just true love for oneself. True love of truth equals the amount of love somebody has for truth equals the speed of its being to acquire this. And you can't invent that love. You can't invent this speed. You only have a certain speed with which you can go and do this process. And as much as you will try to faithfully go by that speed, in ignoring everybody else and the speed of everybody else, because you will get to the goal extremely fast if you go on your speed. So ignore everybody else and everybody else's speed, and the apparent, like, oh, but that being is so much more advanced, and how do they do it so fast, and how can they be so acceptive? Why do I feel so stuck or afraid or full of fears, and this person here seems to ace it? And you need to understand that this process is only about love, and love, it's only about thing that only exists within you as your being. So here, when you enter into this process, you need to understand that you enter into the holy ceremony here. It's nothing else than you and God, you and the most precious thing of life itself. And there is no formula in which that process is right in a way or another. It's only the right way is your way here. Your way is the right way. You and only you have a special relationship with that inner being that is you. No one else has that relationship that you have it, and you can explore it in that way. No one else has it, and you need to enjoy it. Each step of the process, you need to fully be there for it. Taste it, feel it with as much of your being as you can, because that's the holy process, and it will only happen now. So be there for it, fully. Ignore what everybody is doing. Cherish what everybody else is doing, because that's their unique process as well, which is unfolding for them, which is they are feeling the same love that you feel, but through different operations, through different means and mediums. That process might happen different from somebody else, but internally they feel the same love. So you two are united in the love that you already feel. It's the same love. This is how one can truly start loving another. By finding that love within, it opens you up to the love of everything. It's not by wanting to love another, it's by finding that thing within and knowing, and especially seeing beings that are there. You can't not love them. There is natural love starting to happen between everything when once individually we find that love within. But yeah, this was a short detour as well. So I spoke about the first stage. That's the first stage, when we stay within the nothing. And it appears like nothing, and it would just need to be there with it. Because it will feel rejuvenating, even if it seems like nothing. Our mind will start to feel clear, our bodies will start to feel more energized, our souls will start to feel more creative, more free, more free-flowing, more trusting, more loved, cared for, understood. Um, so the second stage, this is the first stage, and it can take years, or it can take months. But anyway, usually it would take years because we come from a entire life of traumas and distortions, and of course it needs to take some time. So it can take years like that. Now the second stage, which is not a stage that happens after the first stage, it can happen simultaneously with the first one. The second stage is that when you go into that nothing, if you really stay there with honesty, with zero mind, zero wantings, you can at some point start to feel true information, true knowledge coming. Why I say it's coming is because it's not coming from anywhere inside of you or outside of you. It's an information that is present, that something with you already knows it. But that something that has known it and knows it has been obstructed. And once your body, mind, soul system starts to align, that veil of obstruction slowly starts to fade off. And that information is slowly revealed as what you already know in a way and what is already there. So you're not knowing anything new. Basically, it's the information that we already know. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's not new information. It's like an amnesiac person coming out of an amnesia. It's like remembering. It's not knowledge. It's remembrance. It's memory. It's that, but not memory from the past. It's like an amnesiac person that didn't know its name anymore and didn't recognize the others around anymore. Slowly starts to, you're my mother, right? Like, I know you. That's memory, but at the same time, it's not memory from the past. It's memory from the present right now. It's like remembers. Oh, you're my mother, right? And that's John. Like, my name is this one. Like, it's like memory. This is knowledge. No, there is no true knowledge, intellectual knowledge, just knowledge of beingness, knowledge of what truly is real and true. That which has been forgotten is starting to come back by doing this process, staying in the present moment, of just being. And once you stay in that inner space, in that nothing, if you stay like that, you will see that slowly your and you have that. You have your mind which is chill, you have your soul which is peaceful, you have your body which feels natural and loved and cared for because now it has the light from the beingness operating and moving in it, and it feels cared for, it feels safe, the body. And once everything, like all these three entities, the body, mind, and soul, feel calm, natural, peaceful, safe, they are open. It's like a natural openness that happens, and in that natural openness, it becomes like a channel in which the mind, the soul, and the body start to remember. Okay, so this thing is like this, right? Like, ah, I am this thing that it's like this, right? So you start to slowly remember, and this is how true knowledge starts to unfold. It's like something within you can start to remember things and know things. Just like that. It's like non-causal knowledge. Nothing provokes it. It's just one can just know things. Just like that. Once you stay in this presence, once you stay in this beingness. And now imagine that you take this tool of just being, and instead of doing it, for example, 1 hour, 2 hours a day or something like that, you take it in your life and you start living your life like this with as much presence as you can, as much emptiness as you can, as much clearness as you can. You go on, you touch objects, you interact with things, but you keep yourself here, present within you, the core of your being, instead of being constantly thinking things in your mind or feeling things in your soul, or I don't know, just it's difficult to speak about the body because I have a special thing with the body. It's difficult to say that, but you can also be in the body, but in the false version of the body, and you could just interact with things like, it's just a pen, and you through your body, but this is the false version of the body anyway. Yeah, so like imagine going through life, taking this practice that it's not a practice anymore, it becomes life itself, and you start living like this. And imagine the entirety of the world opening up, imagining these entire things being completely seen for something different than what you saw them before. Because before your mind was cluttered, your body, mind, soul system, your human consciousness was wrecked, and it was like going, it was completely wrecked, completely distorted, creating distorted views of reality. You were looking at something, but you didn't saw it exactly as it was. You were looking at yourself, you didn't know exactly who you were. Like everything was distorted because this body mind soul system was not aligned and in tune and synchronized with each other. But once you hold the presence in the middle, the core, the heart, the nothing, the being, that these three systems start to, like the atom, they start to fully synchronize, fully align, fully move in tandem with one another. Here it is, you have the atom of life already once again set in motion, and that's it. That's when the individual journey starts. This is the guideline that we can give until this point, because that's when true life starts to happen, and true life doesn't need guidelines. Like, that's when you can find your own knowledge. That's when anybody can find its own path, its own knowledge, its own truth, and it will be the true truth. It will not be an imagined thing anymore, because it will have true beingness operating within that being. So I've made this video to talk about this thing here on the list, and I didn't. I didn't talk about this, but I think it's enough for this video. And I will just close the video, and I will leave it as a video to talk about this tool of staying in the present moment. As I never did a video about it, so I will just leave this video for this one, and I don't know if I will ever talk about this thing here. It's interesting. Anyway, let's see.